Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fabrically Speaking Live. I think I got everything done right this time. And this week I'm going to be talking about needle turn applique, which is also called invisible applique, as I coined it back in the early 90s. People were doing it by hand, and hand sewing can be really hard on your hands after a while. Give me a thumbs up if you agree that your hands hurt holding on to a pin or a needle for a long period of time. Hello, Wendy, welcome. All right, you guys. So I'm going to show you something that some of you have probably seen if you've been to the shows, but you may not know that I didn't make this. And this is a very unique method or purpose for using my version of needle turn applique, which I call invisible applique. And this was done by a very creative customer or student of mine, and what she did was she combined more than one version of applique using my Creative Feet Technical Guide and Workbook and the instructional DVD that you can find at creativefeet.com. We'll go ahead and see what kind of close-up we can give you here. So she found a fish panel that had all these different fish on it. And here you can see she used the regular raw edge applique technique. And see, this is her raw edge applique technique, and then there's the fish. And at the show, people are always like, how are those fish sitting there? And using this technique, she could have stuffed the fish actually and made them three-dimensional on the surface of the fabric. And I have shown other methods of needle turn applique using the Applique method, where you have a fusible interfacing that you fuse to the back side of the fabric, and then you use glue and her tools to fold your fabric over, and then you end up with this little folded under edge. However, you end up with a thick body of fabric underneath there. Then you're able to attach this fabric to another piece of fabric, and I can show you both techniques today. In this case, after this fabric is applied, we use our liquid-based glue to then apply this fabric to that. And I may use this whole thing for a bag design. So if you don't want to do a bunch or a big project and you want to learn a technique, you can just do small little elements. And then incorporate these small pieces into a larger project. And I have this water bottle bag that I have worn out to the point where there's holes all over it. And I also have a tablet. I have with the iPad Pro, and I really need to have a little carrying bag, so I'm leaning toward designing a iPad case and also a new, more efficient water bottle bag. Do those things sound appealing to you? So now I'm taking these after applying the glue to the outside edges of this and just sliding my finger across it very lightly. We want to still see the glue is still there, and you just slide your finger across it. If you push down on the glue, then it'll go into the fabric. I want to cut these tails so they don't cause me issues. We can also adhere them to the glue just a little bit. So you don't have to worry that you might have cut the threads too short. Always want to keep those tails under control. Using the exact same technique, I sewed these two hexies together. And then you can just lay this down. I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. Think about it though. Is that straight? I think I could slide that over a little bit. And I could speed up the drying time on that by using the iron. I've been busy today, I'll tell you what. My focus the entire day was on the show and new patterns coming out. So this will be the water bottle, what are these called? Cozies. So cup cozies designs that I'm doing. And so just letting you know that despite me feeling like I didn't get a lot done, I've also sacrificed my favorite elbow pillow. The one that I just laid 6 layers of fabric down and cut with scissors. Ended up being my favorite elbow pillow, so I took it apart. And I'm now going to scan this in and make an exact duplicate of the original elbow pillow so that you all can have one as cute as I have. And then it'll be a pattern available inside of creativefeet.com. So let's see. Another pattern that I developed years ago that I stalled on for various reasons is the dog collar to replace the plastic collar. So if you have a little fur baby and you don't want to stick them in those ugly cones, this is a pattern that my dogs absolutely loved wearing so much that Chase, when I put it on him, smiled really big. So what I decided to do is to show you how the fish was done. And where did I put it? I'm going to stitch it onto this cute little polka dot fabric that I've been wanting to use for a long time. Do you guys have any fabric that you just love, but you haven't figured out what to do with it? Where's it? Oh yeah, I put it in a safe place. This is probably going to sound really weird to you, but I'm correct in the process or the steps that you're going to take to do this. This ugly gray fabric is a fusible interfacing, and you can get it in white, which would be a better option. I think you could also get it in a nude color as well. It's a very, very lightweight, soft, fusible interfacing that's only fusible on one side. And what you want to do is you want to take and have the fusible side facing up. And you'll know it is because it's bumpy. And then you can take and I want to have this dog be like the fish. So this dog will be dimensional, or there won't be any way to tell how it was stitched on to the polka dot fabric when I'm done. So what I did was drew on the other side using the light tablet the outline of the dog. And then you take the printed side of the fabric to the fusible side. And I'm correct on this. And then do not iron. And this dog could use a little ironing. So I'm going to turn on my noisy iron. Have any of you done or used my method of invisible applique yet? You can also use this to attach an invisible patch pocket on a jacket in just a few steps instead of 15 different steps that it takes to perform that normally. And if you have a blouse and you get a hole in it, you got a t-shirt, we'll just say that, and there's a stain and you want to just, you can't get the stain out no matter what. You can take a strip of fabric with the edges folded under, or create a tube using the fusible interfacing like I'm showing, and then apply this to the garment, sew it, and then you won't be able to tell that you actually sewed that in. It'll just look like it was part of the garment from the beginning. You can also use the same technique for inserting lace into fabrics. And one of the things I want to do really soon, and I know some of you have been really happy about my alterations, I have this blouse and I absolutely love it. It's perfect for summer, but it's too high. It climbs up on my neck. So I'm going to take and alter this in the VIP group. So you guys, this is what I have planned for you. And I'll be scheduling that video very soon because I want to wear this, and I'm going to be using a stretchable lace. So you're going to learn how to attach a stretchable lace to a non-stretch fabric and increase the length of a front of a blouse without changing the dimensions anywhere else. All right, so here we go. I've got my freshly ironed dog design and the fusible side of a single-sided permanent fusible interfacing, and I'm going to just apply that down onto that, or lay it down, and we're gonna sew now. And I'm going to go all the way around this design using a really short stitch length, not just once but twice. You go all the way around the design twice, and I'm trying to decide which foot to use for this. And of course the Satinedge foot is the one that comes to mind, because on the Satinedge foot we can use the guide of the foot and have it be right next to the stitching line so that we can watch in front of the foot instead of behind the foot. The last thing that I did with this machine was sew with the Octi-HOOPS with free motion. How's that for a new angle, you guys? Look at that. I'm so excited that the cameras are working better. And I have been filming for the Creative Feet Extensive course as well, which is partly why the cameras all had to be perfect. So this is the Satinedge foot, and it comes packaged with adapters, little ankles that snap on, but you can also attach it to your sewing machine by just lowering it over the snap-on bar. I didn't draw that line very good, but I can see the color of the fabric, so I'll just follow the design. And always, I try to not start on a corner. I start in from a corner and away from the cutest part or the area that the eye is drawn to the most. You got a lot of cool fabric you haven't decided to do with. Maybe you should bring it into the VIP. I think that's a great idea. All of you VIPs have some fabric or any kind of a project that you can't figure out maybe how to proceed, and we'll have a little powwow at the beginning of the next episode in the VIP and help each other to come up with ideas and maybe share some projects that you've done with similar fabrics. So I've been going through my suitcase, which is why I found my elbow pillow. And so I encourage you to do the same. Look for projects that you already have done that you want to share. And don't be shy about it, you guys. I know some of you think, you shouldn't, or you feel like your work isn't as good as you'd like, do not be that way. The VIP group is, we're buddies. We're supporting each other. When I make mistakes, I've done some things that I don't want to share. Oh man, now I should bring some of them out. So I'm using a straight stitch, and my stitch length is normal at 2.5 millimeters stitch length. I have my needle in the center needle position, lowering the needle and moving the guide over so that the needle, when the needle is lowered into the machine, that the guide on the foot, the little metal pin, is touching the right side of the needle. Instead of a 2.5 millimeter stitch length, I'm changing it or reducing it or increasing the number of stitches in between point A and point B. So if you have a sewing machine that does not have millimeters, instead you have stitch count, or it'll say how many stitches per inch, then you want to increase the number of stitches per inch, or those of you who have millimeters, you want to decrease the size of the distance the feed dogs pull with each stitch, which is stitch length. I'm taking it all the way down to a 1.8 stitch length, so it's a really, really tight stitch length, and so it's going to take longer to get around this circumference of the dog, but it's also going to make it so hard to ever rip the stitches out, which may sound awful if you're a person that needs to know where your seam ripper is all the time. But in this case, I guarantee you, you want to have a really short stitch length. Now we're going to see if my head gets in the way, because this is a brand new camera angle. And I got sandals on. Those of you who know me know I can't sew with, I need my bare foot on that foot control. There we go. Sorry, I didn't have that ready. Goodness. I can see. I'm not in the way. Oh my goodness, how exciting. All right. Stopping with the needle down. Now I've exceeded that line, so I'm going to back up by lifting the foot, and then I will lower the needle and continue around. What's really neat about this particular process is that you can do super detailed pieces. And this is a really sharp turn, so I'm going to go back again. I may even go shorter on my length. Let's go down to a 1.4 millimeter stitch length, which is about 30 stitches per inch. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's about 25 stitches per inch. And lower the needle. And we're just going to inch our way around and lower the needle. You can have your machine set with needle down already, but it's very easy to go too far after you reach a point. And for me, I feel it's always better to just lower your needle as you go around yourself, so you're not surprised or, oh no, I went too far. And now what? Now you're on a 1.4 stitch length or 30 stitches per inch, and you got to rip that out. And now what? Now all the area around it will be weak or at risk of falling apart. Another reason to not have your machine stop with the needle down is that you're going to tend to go too far, or the needle stops and it's not where you want it to be. And now you have to do what to get the needle out of the fabric? It's down. What do? Raise your hand if you know. Do you turn the hand wheel backwards You're not supposed to, right? If you turn the handle backwards, what happens? People do turn the handle backward and they're like, doesn't seem like anything happened. I'm not sure why they tell me I can't turn it backwards. I just did. And then there's this little lever that goes up and down in the front of your machine. That's your take-up lever. So sometimes you can get away with turning your hand wheel backward, but sometimes when you do that, the thread falls off the take-up lever. And then the next time you go to stitch, the thread just falls to the bottom of the fabric and you get a big knotted mess of thread on the bottom. So that's why it's better to just lower your needle yourself instead of having the machine automatically do it. Sometimes I don't mind the needle stopping down, but for the majority of when I'm doing tight turns, it's always better to lower it yourself. You can also just lift the foot and spin, because the guide, because before you begin, you lower your needle and you move the guide over. That means where the guide is where your needle is going to come down. So you're not having to guess, and you won't feel the need to lower the needle as much as you're sewing. Are you guys hot? Is it like summer rain in your house because it's so humid? We've been having a nice time here with lower temperatures this week. I think we're going to go back up. Now I'm starting to get this fabric bunching, and that is telling me that I need to reduce the amount of pressure that the foot is applying as it's pushing down against the feed dogs feeding up and down. So I'm going to go into my sewing machine and adjust the foot pressure. That was at normal. So I'm going to take it down to like 2. One may be too light. So I'm taking it down to 2. I have 5 numbers I can choose from, which means I'm going to go below halfway of full pressure on the fabric. Now, why would you not want to go lighter on the pressure? Because if you go too light on the pressure, you can literally move the fabric in any direction that you like, and that can cause you to slide out sideways from where you're at. Not just have an easier time going front to back, but also be able to move left and right. So here we go. Now I'm just going to lift and turn instead of lowering the needle as I go, which really makes it nice around this curve. Remember, I'm not watching that needle, I'm watching the guide, lining up the guide on that line. I'm lowering it this time because I have like a 90-degree turn. Yeah, very little humidity in Arizona, thankfully, right now. Our monsoon kicks in. Go. No, the East Coast is struggling under high temperatures and high humidity. I hope you're all staying in and doing your sewing when it's too hot to be outside. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this dog. Thought, well, maybe I'll show you a little bit of trapunto applique. And you can use this for a trapunto applique. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm able to sit with my elbows down. My body is resting on the table. And that is what I try to teach you guys to do, but generally I haven't had a good camera angle to be able to allow myself the same courtesy. You want to be able to sew for a longer period of time, get more done. You want to make sure your body doesn't go into rebellion and say, no, no more. What is on your sewing table, you guys? Those of you in the United States, how do you feel about a 4th of July project for next Thursday. I was thinking about a project that I already started and turning it into a wall or a door hanging. And it's back here on the wall. You see that piecing and then the star? That is one of the episodes of Fabrically Speaking Live where I show you how to piece white fabric next to red fabric and how to make sure that you don't end up with the wrong size strips because you're trying to turn your fabric to the light side or the dark side to keep your dark fabric from showing through your white. And I also showed applique in that particular one. So I was thinking about turning that into maybe a windsock or a sign that you can take one of those political metal sign things that you may have from elections and use that to hang a cloth 4th of July sign, or have it hang from your door. Give me your thoughts. Should I turn that into a wall hanging? I mean, a door hanging, which was my original concept or idea. Or do you like the idea of me developing a windsock? Because there is a specific type of fabric you usually use for things like that, and it's flag fabric. I absolutely have flag fabric and thought maybe you guys would like to learn how to make your own flags for your yard. I know it's a little tricky right now because Joann's closing, but I guess Michael's is taking up their fabric, and I will source some of this fabric for you so that you can join in and make your own flags for your yard. So tell me what you want. What do you want? What do you want? Tell me in the comments. My button isn't working right. It's supposed to transition a different way than it is, so I'm having trouble thinking right now. Apologize for my delay. A windsock, yeah. Especially when I mean, there's been days when I'm like, which way is the wind blowing? Oh yeah, because I saw things outside, and you could set up your whole backyard for a really nice picnic only to find out you should have set it up a little different. I don't know. What other reasons do we want a windsock, you guys? Let me come up with the reasons for a windsock. Why do you need to know which direction the wind is blowing? When I'm sawing wood, I don't want the sawdust to come into my face. I just want it to blow the opposite direction. And also sealing artwork with spray paint. Takes a lot longer to go around when you're working with a 1.4 millimeter stitch length. And keep in mind that my directions are to go around twice. I should have done a smaller project. The problem with using cotton fabric for flags is it's not waterproof. And the flag fabric is a nylon kind of fabric that parachutes and kites are made out of. So that's another option for you, is to, see, I shouldn't have had the needle stop down, is to use a kite making fabric. I have all kinds of fabrics that I planned on showing you when I started this show. Another thing I want to show is how to make puppets. I got some fur. Now that my body is doing good and my set is all set up, you can expect a lot more from me. And I'm just going to let you know that last week, immediately after I said goodbye, I got sick. I was so sick. I spent 3 days in bed, and I accidentally left my shop's door unlocked for 3 days. The angels were looking out for me. So I was struggling last week, and I didn't know I was getting sick. I'm all better now. It was diverticulitis or diverticulosis, something that I am challenged with. You might get tempted to do this without stopping, but you can end up bending the guide and then hitting it with your needle. So you want to make sure you do stop. I still have this much to go around. I'm going to go around only once on mine, so you guys don't lose your minds watching me go around it twice, but do take the time to do that on your own project. What are you guys making for dinner? I need some ideas. You measured 15 inches from the seam on each piece. How come when you fold it, the 15-inch marks don't match up? Are you speaking about like sewing jelly rolls together? That kind of thing? The feed dogs pulling on the fabric below can make the bottom fabric grow as the foot pushes down against the top. But I don't know what kind of fabric. What were you doing? What were you making? Because the liquid-based glue should stop your fabric from growing. But if your entire fabric is now longer, that would indicate that the fabric is stretchy. Or maybe you sewed across the grain instead of with the grain, or across the bias. And in those situations, definitely liquid base will help reduce the stretch of the fabric. Another thing is to apply stabilizers to lock the bias in the fabric. So sewing using our hold light on the fabric pattern pieces before you actually sew. And hold light is the plasticky stabilizer that I use on the back of appliques, which I never seem to know where I left it the last time. And you iron it to your fabric, then cut out your pattern pieces. Leave it attached. And you can draw on it and everything, so you can use it for pattern drafting as well. It's really good for fabrics like lame or any type of fabric that just kind of frays on you. It will stop the fabric from fraying. And you sew it together and the straight stitch perforates it, and then after you sew those two pieces together, you can just peel off the hold light, and there's no way that the fabric can stretch in any direction at all. Does that help? It was, oh, flannel. Flannel does have stretch. Yeah. You didn't do the measuring until you had sewn them together. What were you making, Amy? I'm curious. So a shorter stitch length on stretchy fabric will make it stretch less, reducing the foot pressure again as well. Foot pressure lighter on stretch fabric, foot pressure lighter on really, really thick fabric. So the foot pressure is definitely gonna affect the way the sewing machine causes your fabric to actually stretch, even if it isn't a stretch fabric. This is a good day to ask questions as I'm just doing this boring stitch around this design. Anybody else? It's a baby blanket. Yeah, did you use the liquid based? I use the liquid base, and I actually do my binding technique using Minky on Minky. So you can actually have a real binding on baby blankets instead of it looking like, instead of cut and different cheater methods of binding the edge of baby blankets. Oh, almost there. Now this particular stabilizer, this fusible, is stretchy, and it's very, very weak. See how it just tears real easy? But that's the goal for this, is we want the fabric to look like we hand turned it, that we didn't use any fusible. We're cheating. Liquid based is a water soluble stabilizer that's wet, and when it dries, because it doesn't have the weave of the fabric weave crossing like that, when it dries, it is a non-stretch stabilizer, and it'll stop your fabric from stretching or increasing in size. What I do when I make things out of jelly roll fabric too, and you'll see that on that episode where I sewed those white and red fabrics together, I did use a liquid base all the way down, also to prevent that growing or that shifting that occurs, especially with jelly roll cuts. Have any of you ever taken a jelly roll, which is basically just fabrics cut 2.5 to 2 inches in width, automatically done for you, and so you don't have to do the cutting, yay. But they're all the same length, and if you keep sewing one and then the next and then the next and then the next, even though they're all lined up at the top, they won't be all lined up at the bottom, and it will grow, actually expand. And that is because of the way that they're cut. So using the liquid base and waiting for that, well, you don't have to wait for it to fully dry, but if you've got an iron handy, you can do that. Then it'll stop that from happening as well. It's a lot easier than getting a fusible interfacing. We used to use tissue paper and adding machine tape back in the day. Have a roll of adding machine tape there for anytime you had to sew fabrics together that grew on each other. However, sewing through paper like that damages the sewing machine needle, and the damaged sewing machine needle damages your fabric. Yay. Now I have gone back over where I already did that much, which is about 1/2 inch. And now what do? Double check, make sure. So you can see I have white thread there. Now I'm going to cut 1/8 of an inch away from that stitching line. It would be a lot harder to do it on this side and know that I'm 1/8 of an inch away from the stitching line because the thread is matching the fabric. So now you know I have a reason for using a dark color with a light color thread. You can do the same thing using a white stabilizer and using a color that will show up against the white stabilizer. And what you want to do is you want to, it's called grading. Basically you want to do is cut your fabric. And I'm using these Applique 3-hole scissors, which gives each finger a spot. And it takes less pain, it causes less discomfort on your hands. And I'm trying to get as close as I can to that stitching line without cutting it. Not that close. You want to leave a little bit more, but there's not that much space there. Better to go slow. And then you just continue your way around. I can't see that direction, so what I do is cut so that I can see the stitching line. And I hold my fabric like that, so it's taut, and then cut. So basically what we're doing here is we are making an empty pillow. And this pillow that we are making has a fusible backside, but we don't get to see the fusible backside until we've sewn the pillow. And because this is a pillow of sorts, we can stuff it. We can stuff some little fiberfill in there and make it puffy. And wouldn't that make a more interesting baby quilt or a fiddle quilt, if you know anyone who needs a fiddle quilt? Are you guys familiar with what a fiddle quilt is? So you went without any stabilizer, and that's what made it grow. And remember that lighter pressure as well. Now, after I get this cut, I'm going to turn it right side out. But I'm sewing all the way around the dog, so how am I going to turn it right side out? I didn't leave an opening. And why didn't I leave an opening? Because boy, would it be hard to tuck under that little area. I don't know if you guys want to watch me do this. I'll do a little bit on the top view. Always good to rest your elbows, even when doing something like this. And wear your glasses. Make sure you're not letting the tail of the dog get stuck in the scissor and then you chop it off. So it's definitely something you do when you're rested. Make sure you've had your coffee if you drink coffee. And why am I going so close to this? Or why am I cutting the fabric so close to that? All right, so I'm trying to figure out what you're saying while also watching what I'm doing. So you're saying that you sew the two fabrics together and then you cut afterward, and then after that it grew? You're right, Amy. All right, what did you do? I'm going to read it real quick. So are you saying that you kind of made the baby blanket by sewing right sides together and then turning it right side out? I have my phone set for do not disturb and a phone call just came through. I must not have done it right. Flannel fat quarters. Definitely have that project ready for VIP day. Now on the inside of this particular spot here, I have two inside corners, and I'm going to do a V cut and then another cut. A lot easier. See how it's working out? I wish I could say you're making sense to me, but you're only getting part of my brain right now, Amy, because I have to keep using my eyes. Do you guys have any panels like this where give you guys something else to look at besides that? Do you guys have any panels like this? And isn't this a creative thing that she did? So if you want to learn all the different methods of applique that I have in my book and combine it all into one project, you can. And I love Lorelei. I love her, and I also love her fabric. So this is one of her dog designs that I'm going to turn right side out. It's going to be a little tricky to turn this right side out. But that's what she did and how she got around these little fins and made these tiny little nose shapes. And the reason she was able to form the little nose shape is because she used such a short stitch length. Because with a really short stitch length, you can create those shapes because you're stitching around that corner instead of going to the corner and pivoting. This is a project, if you're just coming in, using my invisible applique technique that I created, geez, how many years ago was it? In 1990, right around there, for a quilter who was winning quilt awards. She was like, can you come up with a way to eliminate the hand sewing so I can make more quilts? She didn't mind the process, but she just wanted to be able to sew it faster. And while this seems very tedious, imagine sewing, pushing fabric under and sewing a stitch, pushing fabric under and sewing a stitch, pushing fabric under and sewing a stitch. Gotta make sure I don't, I'm gonna chop off this excess so I know where I'm at. It's also really good to work on the inside of your scissor, not at the tip. It'll keep your scissors healthy, you know, from getting bent, and you'll have more control. These are serrated blades so that when I go to turn, it's stuck in the blade. And I know I'm making you just want these. I think I have one pair right now. I went through I don't want to carry it anymore. It got harder and harder to get people's products to come in. I had so many back orders that it was just way too many emails and phone calls, and inquiries, when's it going to be in? When's it going to be in? That I stopped carrying a lot of stuff of other people's that I love. And this is the Applique scissor. You never know, I may change my mind and start carrying stuff again, but as it stands right now, all I'm going to be bringing back in are all the Invasifil colors and the Polyfast, because I want to create some embroidery designs and you're going to need the thread colors. Almost, yay. Oh my goodness. Yay. It doesn't look very pretty right now, does it? And it's this dog. I'm going to turn this right side out, and I don't want to cut right here because that's a narrow area. I want to cut where it's heavy or wide. Not heavy. Pulling that apart, making sure that I only cut the stabilizer and not the fabric. One little cut. Going to be interesting. And then I'll go down here and do the same for this area. So more than one cut. I feel like it would be better for me to have it cut this way. All right, and now I'm going to use the Applique product. These hand tools that make turning fabric inside out really handy. Those of you who already own them know how wonderful they can be, especially if you know where to put them. So this one has a fork on one end, and then she also has another tool, spatula. And they have this side. I hate the noise I'm giving you. You can also use the back end of a paintbrush. This is a foot that, because we do take returns even if people damage the Creative Feet. They're warranted for life, even if your dog chews it up or you drive over it with your car. And this is one of the feet that I had to keep because even though it got run over by the car and the tire went like this, the foot is still all together. It's just, oh, poor thing. It just suffered a little bit of discombobulation. So even though it was under a ton of automobile, it's still all together. Isn't that something? The risk of using this one is the point might go through the fabric, but we'll just give it a go. How you doing, Wendy? Oopsie. This stabilizer, by the way, is probably 36 years old. Maybe even 40 years old. So it's probably starting to decompose. This would be one of those times when it'd be good to buy a new one, a new thing of stabilizer. So you can see how we're able to turn it. And now the edge is in the seam. You guys used to be more chatty. Are you guys hot? all of this has to go through the neck, or all of this has to go through the neck. I guess we're going to take its bottom. Yeah, Wendy's a little quiet today, huh? Are you all right? So of all the animals that you could have on your cup, which ones would you want the most on a cup? Because I was going to give you more than one version of the cup cozy pattern. Do some with animals, some with words, and then a series with maybe birds. Just watching. Are you watching with your cute little doggy? What is her name? Got to be patient to do this one. If you like handwork, this would be a good one for those of you who like to turn. By the way, I have a pattern that I created for this process, and I sped it up by having you do another type of technique, automatic gathering while sewing fabrics together. And I created a hummingbird design coming together over a stained glass window using the satinedge foot to sew the hummingbirds down, and then the stained glass window is leaded with black yarn. And this is another pattern that kind of got stalled over the years, but I have all the pieces. I think I actually had a crew of people working with me, and I was having them sew some of the pieces because there were so many pieces. And then I hit the road. I should share that. We will have a show and tell VIP gathering and see what you guys think. It's almost right side out. And this is when you'll want to use one of my pressers to press before you press with the iron. So easy to go through this stabilizer. Lena. So this is the cat idea. And it's a lot easier to do a cat that works for everybody who likes a cat. But it's not so easy to come up with a dog that everybody likes. Isn't he cute? Now, I didn't totally design that. I use Adobe. And I found a design like that, and then I'm making it different to fit the pattern itself. This is a vector design. So is there a dog that would like everyone would like? Or would I have to do a Yorkie and this dog's ears? That ear has got to come out. So I'm kind of going like this. It looks like such a rag right now, doesn't it? This would be a good time to fast forward if you're watching on the replay and you don't have the patience to watch someone turn something right side out. Although I do talk and teach as I yak. Yeah, definitely buy some new stabilizer. Mine is so old, it's not even holding together. And I could just stop doing this and go ahead and show you the sewing part on that. His tail is in there somewhere. Did I cut off his tail on accident? It must be in here somewhere. I am very patient, but I'm losing mine. Only because I know live videos, people get impatient if I stop talking for 5 seconds. So feel free to ask me a question. I'm almost done turning it out and I'm going to iron it down, and then you'll see the benefit of this is that you can sew once you have all your pieces turned right side out. It is so fast to sew around. What thread do you think I'll use to sew around this? I don't want my stitches to show. That's why I call it invisible applique, because the stitch itself is invisible. Same thing I do for binding on quilts, where you don't see any stitching when you're done. You know that we have an issue with the invisible thread right now. To answer your summation. Oh, that's the bow. I was wondering what I was turning right side out. So what I did was I sewed around. I thought I had a different camera angle up. Sorry about that, you guys. I sewed around the design with a fusible side of fusible interfacing, facing the right side of the fabric, and then sew all the way around the design with a 1.5 millimeter stitch length, or 30 stitches per inch. I don't know where his tail went. Where did his tail be? Oh, here it is. And why are we doing this? Because sometimes it's really cool to not have any stitch showing. There's its tail. Come on out, baby. Oh my God, you still aren't seeing it. Oh, no wonder. I thought you were on this camera angle. Sorry, guys. Some setting got messed up. So its tail. He doesn't have his tail between his legs. He's got his tail tucked in. So the invisible thread, the company that was winding it for us for many, many years, the gentleman that owned it retired, sold his company to somebody else, and he didn't buy the winding machines, which was a really big part of the guy's business. And I'm a little disappointed that he didn't call me. I have no idea what happened to his winding machines. I'm having a really hard time getting that tail out. So now we don't have a company to wind our spools. So when you go to creativefeet.com and you look for nylon thread and you find the invisible thread, you're going to find big giant spools of invisible thread. And until I can find another source to replace it, that's the only option I have for you right now. You can also use the Invasifil thread and kind of use a color that complements the color that you're going to be stitching it onto, because the stitch we're going to use is only 1 or 1/2 millimeters wide. Super small. Come on, tail. You're slowing me down. Come on out. I'm losing my patience. So basically, when you're done, you end up with empty little pillows. And this dog is almost to that point. And then you would use one of my pressers to press the fabric before ironing, so that you know that you're not going to have the interfacing showing, but just the pretty fabric on top. You can see how this is kind of oozing its way out, and that's because it's cut on this side. Is there? Oh, there's another area that needs to come out. It's starting to look more like it. Using a paintbrush too, it's probably better. Let's do that. There we go. I even set it and then I didn't use the paintbrush. The paintbrush is better. It's smoother. All right, tail, where are you? Such a skinny spot where the tail was. But this is what the whole point of this is that you can do some super intricate designs. And these are the Applique tweezers, another product I love that let you grab just try and get that tail out. So how much time do you think I took to prepare for today's class? I had about 15 different ideas of what I was going to do today, and I did not do any of those. All of a sudden, this popped into my head, and I went, all right, that's what we're going to do. And I actually had to start 15 minutes late. But it wasn't from me not preparing. Come on, tail. My issue is that my stabilizer is 40 years old. And it's not as strong as it used to be. Which means it's probably not 100% synthetic, because synthetic fabrics last and last and last. Must have some cotton in it. And cotton does rot. Oh, come on. Come on, we're almost done. So now, as you go around and you press, if you can't get the stabilizer to not show, then you use the liquid-based glue to secure it. You know it's really old when a paintbrush pushes through. All right. So I wanted to apply this little guy onto this polka dot fabric. And in order for the stabilizer to not show, you gotta press it. And if some of the stabilizer is coming up to the front, you'll want to pull it to the back and glue it back so that you don't have to deal with it after. And once you know that all your stabilizer is iron or stuck underneath, then you just iron, and the fusible interfacing is going to attach to this fabric. So you don't have to glue all the way around like you do with the other kind. Yeah, buy new stabilizer. I have a whole bolt of this. It's fine if it's a big thing. So I believe I have limited, I can no longer, I've lost my ability to speak. The stabilizer is too rotted. And I don't want to put you guys through any more torture. So we're going to switch to this one, and I'll sew this and explain the sewing process for going around the fish. We are going to go ahead and use a color thread in the bobbin that matches the color fabric. And then in the needle, I'm going to go all the way down to a nylon monofilament thread. And I'm going to do half with the invisible thread and half with the Invasifil thread, and let you guys decide and see if you can't get the invisible thread. And the reason I prefer the nylon version of monofilament is because it is designed to be sewn with. It has this stretch to it, which makes it so that when the fabric stretches, the thread doesn't break. Putting the thread on my cone stand and then take it to the machine. And this thread is so fine that you could mistake it for hair. This is the clear, which doesn't show up, which is the one you want, is the one that doesn't show up. If you had smoke on there, the smoke thread would look dirty against the fabric. Now, because this thread is so fine, we can use a needle that is so fine too. What is that, a little sequin? This is a 7010. And it is a denim needle. Now the reason I'm using a denim needle is because it's a sharp point. Now it's going to cut right through that fabric no matter what, and be less likely to cause a skip stitch. It's also going to make it harder to see. If you use a thin thread with a big needle, you'll end up with a large hole and you could skip stitches. I can't even see the thread to thread the needle, and I'm not going to use my needle threader, because if you use the needle threader on a needle that's only a 10, the opening in the needle threader is too, let's see, let's do this. I'm going to save that paper. It's already nice and pretty. Since I can't see the thread, you can take the thread and lay it down. You can feel it in between your fingers. and then draw on the thread a little bit. And now you can see that thread to be able to thread it through the needle. Also, if you can't see the eye of the needle, you can put white paper behind the eye of the needle to make it easier to see it. So this thread is so thin. Did you guys know about that trick of coloring on your thread? Chopstick is a great turning tool. I agree with you guys. I'm going to switch to a zigzag stitch, 1 millimeter wide, and I reserve the right to possibly lower it to even lower. Bring the needle down in the swing of the stitch, the right swing, that's going to go off the edge. And we want that needle right off the edge of the fabric with the needle lowered. That is the widest point of the needle. So we just move the guide over to it so that the wire on the guide, this little wire that's the guide pin, it's going to be riding up against the fabric, and we have the needle is in between the metal pin and the fabric's edge. It's a super, super narrow width of stitch. You double check to make sure you have it set correctly. And then once you know you are, you watch the front of the foot. And now that's a hand stitch and a hand stitch and a hand stitch and a hand stitch. And I did go a little bit too far. There we go. Sewing to the corner. And I could just lift and turn, because the guide is set for the outside swing, so I don't have to turn my hand wheel. Do not watch the needle, watch the front of the foot, keeping the fabric so that it's touching. When you see it starting to separate, you want to bring it back. It sounded like someone was just tapping on my door. And see how, now if that were a 90-14 needle, I'd have a really big hole in the fabric. And after a little while, the fibers will come back together and you can't tell at all how you sewed it on. Promised you I would do part of this with Invisible and part with the Invasifil. So I'm going to go all the way around one hexie. And the Invasifil, not to be confused with Invisible, is a polyester, not a nylon. And it's really thin as well, except for it's a fiber instead of a monofilament. So we're going to see how well that works. I could use a color that's more matching to that, but I want you to be able to see it a little bit. So now instead of cutting my bobbin thread, I'm just going to raise the foot and cut the needle thread. Leaving the bobbin thread connected makes it so I don't have to tie a knot. So from that to this is 100 weight polyester thread. And I'm threading the machine with the thread on the thread dispenser, just as if it were a cone of thread. But instead of having it just go from there, I'm going to take off a spool of thread that I had on one of the vertical posts and bring it around that post. So this skinny little spool of thread is on the post. You go up through the eye hook and then come around a post and then take it to the machine, and you'll have less chances of the thread breaking or shredding up above the eye of the sewing machine needle. Do not use your needle threader because this is a 70-10 needle. And the thing that pushes through the eye of the needle is bigger than the eye is. You add the thread into the amount of thickness that that little wire that your thread dispenser uses to push thread through the needle, and you'll be bending that needle threader. Have any of you ever bent your needle threader before? Do any of you have a needle threader that you've never been able to use because you bent your needle threader? That can be such a bummer. Now I have this thread, this end of my thread, and I don't want it to come loose, and I'm starting where I left off. So what I'm going to do is stitch of the stitch of the width. The width of the stitch has not changed. So I shouldn't have to do anything but start sewing again. I've done a couple stitches, and now I'm going to take that thread and pull it underneath for a little bit. So it's actually under the edge of that fabric. And that's another way of securing the end of that stitch. Now I can go ahead and cut it off. Just tighten that needle thread. At one show I arrived, and if you don't know that I did trade shows, it's just getting harder and harder on me because I'm over 60 now, and I don't know how people do that all the way up until they're 90. It's not something that I can handle. Just 3 shows a year, and I need a couple months to recoup. So what's going on right now is I'm using Invasifil, which is 100 weight polyester thread, to hand sew by machine this fabric that has the edges already turned under and is being held in place by our liquid-based glue. And I'm able to sit in a healthy posture. I don't have to sit really close to the sewing machine because I'm not watching the needle, I'm watching the guide, making sure the fabric is always touching the guide. I have the needle 70-10 denim needle, which is a really, really tiny needle. You could even go to an 8 needle with this thread. But when you have your fabric folded under like that, the 8 needle is more vulnerable to breaking. But you do want a small needle because you want a small hole so that you don't see the hole. You want it to look as though the hexes were sewn into a hexie-shaped hole. And that's what's so cool about needle turn applique. So you can see that you can't really see that stitch, even though it's a colored thread, a fibered thread. And that every stitch the sewing machine is sewing is a hand stitch, normally done by hand. We're doing it by machine. The turning under part is the slow part, and then once it's secured to the main body of fabric, then you can go really fast. Now you know why there's so many different needles, styles, and sizes. Now you might think if I want to do trapunto that I would have to stuff it before I sew it. But that's not the case. So if you wanted to do a bunch of fish or butterflies, if this were just a butterfly shape applique, and you want them to stick out higher than this fabric but be bumpy and squishy and soft, that is trapunto applique done using the same techniques. And then after you get your fabric stitched on, try not. then you can just go behind and cut, just like I did with the stabilizer, but cut the back of this fabric and then stuff it from behind, and you would have puffy hexies. Which is, I'll show you in my book here. And this is the Creative Feet Technical Guide and Workbook, which is for you to learn all the different things that you can do. All right. I'm not sure the page is still in here because this goes to shows with me. Stitch edging. Here it is. So this is the Trapunto applique. Well, the page is loose. You can. It's a pillow. All right. So that's a brief lesson on needle turn applique, which done by machine has a different name, invisible applique. It's also known as patchwork applique, in that it's utilized or used a lot in quilting, adding different elements to a quilt. Elements that are not geometric in shape, curvy shapes. So if you want to do a grapevine and have a vine, this is the way to get that to look as though you sewed a vine-shaped piece of fabric into a vine-shaped hole when you actually didn't. If you have a really skinny area, you can take yarn and thread it through a needle and feed a yarn into the skinny vines that you've stitched on by machine, making it look like you did it by hand. And a lot easier to stuff something with yarn than it is to try to shove fiberfill into the holes on that. So, if you're new to my channel, I sure hope that you'll subscribe. And if you like this video, go ahead and share it with your friends. And if you'd like to, you can join my school, create.clarerowley.com. You'll find the link in the description below the video. I sure like to hear what you think about this video. If you have any questions, I'm looking forward to reading them in the comments. And I do read all my comments, or all your comments. So there we go. I think I've said it all. And with this is the summer edition of Fabrically Speaking Live. And I will be back again next Thursday at 2 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, God willing. Today I was 15 minutes late. Sorry about that. It was unavoidable. And yeah, the non-stop demonstrations at shows where I don't stop for 7 hours straight. We'll see. I still am having ideas of doing an event, maybe up in Prescott. We'll just see, and I'll let you know. But know that I have not forgotten that you guys want a live class. I'm trying to divide myself into 1,000 pieces. It hasn't been working that well. I love you guys. VIPs, remember, get your... I can't remember what I said, but if you are a VIP... I will be watching this again to remember what I told you I was going to do. And I'll be scheduling our next live very soon. Let me know, is the first week of July not good because of the 4th of July? Would you rather me do it the second week of July? And those of you who are in the Creative Feet Extensive know that videos are going to be uploading this weekend. And I will be sending you guys out information and preparing a live for you as well. And I'm going to try my darnest to not get sick or hurt myself right now. I'm in really good shape. Best shape I've been in years. So crossing fingers and thanking God. And with that, see you next week. Bye.